The transport ship Meridian was dying. Alarms screamed through the corridors as the vessel tore through Drachma's atmosphere, flames licking at the hull. In the cargo bay, pilot Rachel Morgan fought with the emergency pod controls, her hands shaking as explosions rocked the ship around her. Inside the pod, her 6-month-old son Danny slept peacefully, somehow undisturbed by the chaos. Rachel had maybe 30 seconds before the ship broke apart completely. She slammed the release button and watched the pod shoot away from the dying vessel. Then the world became fire and twisted metal. When Rachel woke up, she was lying in purple grass under 2 suns. Every bone in her body hurt. The Meridian was scattered across a valley in smoking pieces. She stumbled through the wreckage, screaming Danny's name until her throat was raw. She found the pod 300 yards from the main crash site. It had landed upside down against a boulder, but the seal held. Rachel tore at the release mechanism with bleeding fingers. The hatch popped open. Danny looked up at her and smiled. He was completely fine. Rachel pulled him out and held him so tight he started to cry. She sank to her knees in the alien grass and sobbed with relief. That's when she heard it. A sound like mountains grinding together. Like thunder rolling through stone. Rachel looked up and forgot how to breathe. Something massive was moving down from the cliffs. At first she thought it was a landslide, but then she saw the shape. 4 legs, each as thick as ancient trees. Wings folded against a body that gleamed like living crystal, catching the light of both suns and throwing rainbows across the valley. A long serpentine neck curved down, and at the end of it was a head the size of her crashed ship. A dragon. An actual dragon. Rachel had seen the grainy photos in xenobiology classes. The Drakthor. Extinct for thousands of years, or so the Galactic Council claimed. But this thing was very much alive, and it was walking straight toward her and Danny. Rachel tried to run but her legs wouldn't work. She managed to stand, placing herself between the creature and her son. The dragon kept coming, each footstep making the ground shake. It was close enough now that Rachel could see her reflection in its crystalline scales. Close enough to see the ancient intelligence in eyes that glowed like molten gold. The dragon stopped 10 feet away. Rachel held Danny against her chest and waited to die. She thought about her husband back on Earth, wondered if he'd ever know what happened to them. The dragon lowered its enormous head slowly, carefully, until its snout was level with Danny. Rachel wanted to scream but no sound came out. Then the dragon spoke. The voice rumbled through Rachel's bones, deep and impossibly old, but the words were perfect English. My son. Rachel's mind went blank. The dragon wasn't talking to her. It was looking at Danny. The massive creature moved closer, and before Rachel could react, it touched its snout gently to Danny's forehead. The contact lasted maybe 3 seconds. In that moment, Danny's eyes changed. The normal brown of his irises flashed brilliant gold, the same color as the dragon's eyes. Then it was gone, and he was just a baby again, reaching his tiny hands toward the dragon's face. What did you do to him? Rachel found her voice finally, though it came out as a whisper. The dragon pulled back slightly. When it spoke again, there was something like sadness in that ancient voice. I have done nothing. I have only recognized what he already is. The creature turned its gaze to Rachel. You do not know your own history, child of Earth. Your species carries within it the blood of the first ones. The ones who walked alongside my kind when the galaxy was young. For 10,000 years, that blood has slept. Until now. Rachel looked down at Danny. He seemed normal. Happy, even, making cooing sounds at the dragon like it was an interesting toy. I don't understand. You will. The dragon's eyes suddenly went distant, unfocused. They have seen us. The council watches this world, though they pretend it is empty. They have seen a Drakthor touch a human child. They have seen the awakening. The creature's voice grew heavy. They will come for you. They will come for all your kind. They fear what you might become. As if summoning them with his words, lights appeared in the sky. Dozens of them. Ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, their hulls bearing the symbol of the Galactic Council. Rachel's blood went cold. The dragon noticed her fear and made a sound deep in his chest, something between a growl and a sigh. My name is Thornscale, the dragon said. I am veteran of the last war, and I have slept in these mountains for 3,000 years. But I sleep no longer. Thornscale spread his wings, and they caught the light like stained glass windows the size of city blocks. They think your species weak because you have no claws, no natural armor. But they forget what makes a species truly dangerous. Not strength of body, but strength of spirit. The willingness to fight for what you love. The ships were getting closer. Rachel could see them clearly now. Warships. Heavy cruisers. Enough firepower to glass a continent. Thornscale looked down at her one more time. Run, Rachel Morgan. Take your son and hide in the caves to the north. I will buy you time. How do you know my name? Rachel asked, but the dragon was already moving, launching himself into the sky with a sound like shattering crystal. Rachel didn't wait to see what happened next. She ran toward the caves, Danny clutched in her arms, while behind her the first dragon anyone had seen in millennia rose to meet the Galactic Council's fleet. Above Drakma, the war began. 300 light-years away, in a space station the size of a small moon, the emergency session of the Galactic Council began. The chamber was massive, with seats arranged in circular tiers that rose toward a domed ceiling showing real-time feeds of the galaxy. Representatives from 4 to 7 species sat in those seats, but only a handful actually mattered. The ones with the biggest fleets. The ones with the most votes. Ambassador Krell of the Vril clicked his mandibles nervously as the hologram played again. The crystal dragon. The human child. Those golden eyes. He'd watched the footage 17 times already, and each viewing made his stomach churn. The other council members muttered among themselves in a dozen different languages. Some looked confused. Others looked angry. But Krell saw fear in their eyes. Good. They should be afraid. We must vote immediately, Krell announced, his translator converting his clicking speech into the common tongue. Quarantine protocols for the entire human sphere of influence. No ships in. No ships out. We contain this before it spreads. The Cetri representative, a being that looked like a dolphin crossed with an octopus floating in a tank of liquid, made a sound of protest. Contain what, exactly? We have seen one dragon and one human child. This hardly justifies imprisoning an entire species. Krell's compound eyes fixed on the Cetri. Naive fools, all of them. The aquatic species had joined the council only 500 years ago. They knew nothing of the real history. You do not understand what you have witnessed. That was a Drakthor. They were supposed to be extinct. Supposed to be. An elderly Saurian commander named Vex leaned forward in his seat, his scaled face twisted into something between a smile and a snarl. Let us speak plainly, shall we? The Drakthor were not extinct. They were driven into hiding. By us. By this council. 10,000 years ago, after the Purge Wars. The chamber erupted. Half the representatives started shouting at once. The younger species, the ones who had joined the council in the last few millennia, looked shocked. They'd been told the dragons died out naturally. That the precursors, the ancient race that once ruled the galaxy, had simply vanished. No one had told them about the wars. About what the council's founders had done to ensure they stayed on top. Krell slammed his foreleg on the console, creating a sharp crack that echoed through the chamber. The past does not matter. What matters is the present. That dragon recognized something in the human child. We all saw it. The genetic markers are awakening. Genetic markers for what? A young Felid representative asked, her cat-like features confused. Vex answered, his voice cold. The precursors were not one species. They were a partnership. Dragons provided raw power, tactical processing, and space-time manipulation abilities. Their bonded partners provided creativity, adaptability, and strategic thinking. Together, they were unstoppable. They controlled 70% of the galaxy before the Council's founders decided to end their reign. By committing genocide, the Cetri added quietly. By ensuring our own survival, Krell shot back. The precursors treated other species as lesser beings. They would not share their technology. Would not allow others to advance beyond certain limits. We freed the galaxy from their tyranny. And now you discover that humans might be their descendants, the Cetri said. So your solution is to do it again? To punish an entire species for what they might become? Krell pulled up another hologram. This one showed a star map. Earth and its 73 colony worlds, highlighted in blue. Humanity has spread across 42 systems in just 300 years. They reproduce quickly. They adapt to almost any environment. They ask too many questions and refuse to accept limits. And now we learn they carry precursor genetics. He paused, letting that sink in. If they bond with dragons again, if they awaken their full potential, this council becomes irrelevant. We cannot allow that. The vote took less than 10 minutes. 32 species voted for immediate quarantine. 8 voted for extermination. Only 7 voted against action. The Cetri's representative looked disgusted as the results appeared on the main display. You have just guaranteed a war, the Cetri said. We have prevented one, Krell replied. Within hours, Council warships began moving toward human space. The blockade force was massive. 200 heavy cruisers. 500 frigates. Enough firepower to enforce the quarantine indefinitely. Admiral Jex, a Saurian with 40 years of service, commanded the fleet from his flagship Inevitable. He'd fought in suppression campaigns before. This would be simple. Humanity had decent ships, but they were new to the galactic stage. Barely 3 centuries since first contact. They had no experience with real war. The first human ships to encounter the blockade were civilian transports trying to reach the colony on New Boston. Jex gave them one warning. Turn back or be destroyed. The lead transport, a cargo hauler called Liberty's Dream, ignored the warning. Its captain, an older woman named Patricia Hayes, broadcast a message on all frequencies. This is Captain Hayes of the Liberty's Dream. We're carrying medical supplies to New Boston. They have an outbreak of Rigel fever. Children are dying. We're not turning back. Jex gave the order to fire. The Liberty's Dream and its 2 escort ships were destroyed in seconds. 1,500 souls gone in flashes of light. The rest of the human convoy turned back, but the message went out across every human world. The Council had fired first. Had killed civilians carrying medicine. Earth's government tried diplomacy. They sent ambassadors, requested emergency meetings, offered inspections to prove they weren't a threat. Krell denied every request. Instead, he tightened the blockade. No ships in or out. No exceptions. On 73 worlds, human colonies found themselves cut off from supplies, from medicine, from each other. On New Boston, the fever outbreak spread without the promised medicine. 4,000 children died in 3 weeks. On the mining colony Perseverance, a life support failure killed 800 people because replacement parts couldn't get through. On New Terra, the largest human colony outside Earth, food shipments stopped. Riots began as supplies ran low. Then a human fleet arrived at New Terra, trying to break the blockade. 30 ships led by Admiral James Cooper, a veteran of the border skirmishes with pirates. He broadcast a simple message. We have food. We have medicine. Our people are dying. Let us through. Jex had his orders. He opened fire. The human ships fired back. The battle lasted 6 hours. Cooper's fleet was destroyed, but not before taking out 12 Council vessels. Admiral Cooper died on his bridge, still broadcasting defiant messages as his ship broke apart. His last words were recorded and spread across human space within hours. We will not kneel. We will not surrender. And we will not forget. On Drakmor, in the crystal caves where Rachel hid with Danny, Thornscale felt every human death through the growing bond. Each life lost sent a pulse of pain through the connection linking him to the child. Danny cried constantly now, sensing the deaths even though he couldn't understand them. Rachel held her son and watched the dragon's eyes glow brighter with each passing hour. They're killing us, Rachel whispered. Why? We didn't do anything. Thornscale's voice was heavy with old grief. They fear you because my kind loved you once. Because together, humans and dragons were unstoppable. The council was built on our graves, and they will kill every one of you rather than let us rise again. The dragon lifted his massive head, and Rachel felt something change in the air around them. A vibration, too low to hear but strong enough to feel in her bones. What are you doing? She asked. Calling my brothers and sisters, Thornscale replied. We have slept long enough. Across the galaxy, dragons stirred from hiding places they had occupied for millennia. And the real war began. The first dragon appeared over Earth's moon 3 days after the blockade began. Nobody knew where it came from. The council's sensors showed nothing, and then suddenly there it was. A massive creature made of what looked like living obsidian, wings spread across 2 miles of space. It didn't attack. It just floated there, watching the council fleet with eyes that burned like white stars. Admiral Jex ordered his ships to open fire. Plasma cannons lit up the void. Missiles streaked toward the dragon. Enough firepower to destroy a city hit the creature dead on. When the explosions cleared, the dragon was still there. Completely unharmed. Then it did something that made every sensor on every ship scream in alarm. The dragon's crystalline body pulsed with electromagnetic energy, and every council ship within 1,000 miles went dark. Engines died. Weapons offline. Life support stuttering. The dragon folded space around itself and vanished, leaving 30 disabled warships drifting helplessly near Earth's moon. That was just the beginning. Over the next week, dragons appeared across human space. They came from asteroid fields where they'd been sleeping in vacuum for centuries. They emerged from the atmospheres of gas giants where they'd hidden in the crushing pressure. Some had been on dead worlds at the galaxy's edge, waiting. One dragon, covered in scales that looked like frozen starlight, had been drifting through deep space in hibernation for over 2,000 years. They were all different. Some were massive, big enough to dwarf battleships. Others were smaller, more agile, built for speed. Their scales came in every color imaginable. Crystal, metal, stone, even one that seemed to be made of contained plasma. But they all had those same golden eyes. And they were all angry. On the colony world of Haven, a council bombardment fleet prepared to punish the humans for resisting. 20 ships moved into orbit, ready to destroy the settlement's power grid. A dragon appeared between them and the planet. This one looked like it was carved from emerald, its scales catching the system's sun and scattering green light everywhere. The fleet commander demanded it move. The dragon responded by flying straight through his flagship. Not around it. Through it. The dragon's crystalline body passed through the hull like it wasn't even there, and every system on the ship fused into useless metal. The fleet retreated. But the council had numbers. For every dragon, they had 100 ships. Admiral Jex regrouped his forces and tried a new strategy. Overwhelming firepower. He assembled a fleet of 80 vessels and cornered a dragon near the Jupiter orbital stations. The dragon, covered in blue-white scales like frozen lightning, was outnumbered and surrounded. Jex gave the order to fire everything at once. That's when Rachel Morgan and Thornscale arrived. Rachel didn't fully understand what was happening to her. Ever since Thornscale had touched Danny, she'd felt something growing between her and the dragon. A connection. At first it was just emotions. She could feel Thornscale's rage at the council, his grief for the humans dying. Then she started seeing flashes of images that weren't from her own eyes. Aerial views. Tactical data. The dragon's perspective. Now, as Thornscale carried her through space in a bubble of warp spacetime, Rachel discovered she could do more than just see through his eyes. She could think through his mind. Thornscale's brain processed information faster than any computer. He could track 1,000 targets simultaneously, calculate trajectories, predict enemy movements 3 steps ahead. And Rachel realized she could add something he couldn't do alone. Creativity. Unpredictability. Human intuition. They hit Jex's fleet like a meteor storm. Thornscale scattered electromagnetic pulses that disabled half the ships instantly. But this time, Rachel was guiding him. She saw patterns in the fleet formation that Thornscale's tactical mind had dismissed as irrelevant. Weak points. Gaps. She directed him through the gaps, and suddenly they were inside the fleet's defensive perimeter. Thornscale's claws tore through energy shields that should have been impenetrable. His tail whipped around and cracked a cruiser's hull like an eggshell. The other dragon, the one that had been trapped, understood immediately what was happening. It joined the attack with renewed fury. 2 dragons and 1 human woman destroyed or disabled 4 to 7 ships in 18 minutes. Jex's flagship limped away, and Rachel found herself laughing with adrenaline and terror as Thornscale roared his victory across all frequencies. Word spread fast. On Earth, a former fighter pilot named Kevin Torres watched the footage of Rachel and Thornscale. He'd been grounded when the blockade started, stuck on leave visiting his sister in Denver. Now he looked up at the sky and whispered, "I want to do that." 3 days later, a dragon found him. She was smaller than Thornscale, covered in scales that shifted between silver and gold depending on the angle of light. She landed in Kevin's backyard while his sister screamed for him to run. Instead, Kevin walked up to the dragon and put his hand on her snout. Her name was Swiftwind, and she'd been waiting 800 years for someone like him. Kevin's eyes flashed gold, and suddenly he could feel her joy, her loneliness, her desperate need to fly again with a partner who understood her. Within 2 weeks, 30 humans had bonded with dragons. Within a month, 200. They came from all walks of life. Soldiers like Kevin. Scientists. Doctors. A teacher from New Terra named Lisa Chen bonded with a dragon made of living crystal and used their combined abilities to evacuate a colony under bombardment, saving 12,000 lives. A mechanic from Mars named Robert Bailey bonded with a massive bronze dragon and figured out how to use the dragon's electromagnetic abilities to supercharge human ships, making them twice as fast. The council couldn't understand what they were fighting. Traditional tactics meant nothing against enemies who fought as one mind. When a dragon rider pair engaged council ships, they moved with perfect synchronization. The dragon provided raw power and processing speed. The human provided tactical creativity and unpredictable strategies. Council admirals found themselves outmaneuvered by opponents who shouldn't have been able to coordinate that precisely. At the Battle of the Orion Gate, 12 Dragon Rider pairs held off a council fleet of 300 ships for 6 hours. They used the asteroid field like three-dimensional chess pieces, luring ships into positions where they couldn't maneuver, picking them off one by one. The council lost 90 ships before retreating. The humans lost no one. Rachel became something she never imagined. A leader. Other riders looked to her because she'd been first. She and Thornscale coordinated attacks across multiple systems, using the mental link that all Dragon Rider pairs now shared. It was like a giant neural network. When one rider discovered a new tactic, every other rider knew it instantly. When Kevin Torres figured out how to use his dragon's abilities to create temporary wormholes for quick escapes, that knowledge flowed through the bond to everyone. But it wasn't just about fighting. Rachel noticed something else. The bond was changing humans. Kevin could hold his breath for an hour now. Lisa's reflexes were 3 times faster than before. Robert could see electromagnetic spectrums that normal humans couldn't perceive. And all of them were healing faster, thinking clearer, processing information at speeds that should have been impossible. On Drakmar, Danny was growing up faster than he should. At 6 months old, he was already speaking in complete sentences. At 8 months, he was walking. The bond with Thornscale, filtered through Rachel, was accelerating his development. And more than that, he was becoming a hub. Every dragon and rider could feel him, sense him. The child had become the heart of the network that connected them all. Admiral Jex reported back to the council with footage of the battles. Krell watched in silence as dragons and their human partners destroyed fleets that should have crushed them. The Vril ambassador's mandibles clicked nervously as the implications sank in. They are not just fighting alongside dragons, Krell said quietly. They are becoming something new. Something we cannot defeat with conventional warfare. He turned to face the council chamber. We need the Saurian Empire's full military might. We need their planet-killer weapons. Because if we do not end this quickly, we will lose everything. The war had been raging for 3 months when Rachel made a mistake. She and Thornscale were leading a rescue mission near the blockaded colony of New Harmony. Intelligence suggested only a small council patrol in the area. Easy in, grab the stranded colonists, easy out. But intelligence was wrong. The Saurian Empire had set a trap. 50 ships appeared the moment Rachel and Thornscale dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Heavy cruisers in a perfect sphere formation, weapons already charging. Rachel felt Thornscale's alarm spike through their bond. They'd walked right into an ambush. Get out of here, Rachel said through their mental link, even as Thornscale was already turning, already trying to fold space around them for an emergency jump. But the Saurians had learned. They developed new technology specifically to counter dragon abilities. A web of energy spread across the area, disrupting space-time itself. Thornscale couldn't jump. They were trapped. The fight lasted 11 minutes. Thornscale was magnificent, disabling 6 ships even as weapons fire tore into his crystalline hide. Rachel felt every hit like it was her own body being torn apart. She tried every trick they'd learned, every tactic that had worked before. Nothing mattered against those numbers. A missile got through Thornscale's defenses and exploded against his left wing. The dragon screamed, and Rachel screamed with him. They started falling toward New Harmony's atmosphere, spinning out of control. The Saurian flagship caught them in a tractor beam. Rachel's last conscious thought before she blacked out was a desperate mental cry through the bond network. A warning to the other riders. Don't come after us. It's a trap. When Rachel woke up, she was in a cell. Not a traditional prison. The walls were some kind of transparent material, probably reinforced to contain her. She could see Thornscale in an enormous chamber beyond her cell. The dragon was unconscious, wrapped in chains made of the same energy that had trapped them in space. Dozens of Saurian scientists moved around him with instruments, scanning, measuring, taking samples. A door hissed open. Emperor Verex himself entered her cell, flanked by guards. He was old for a Saurian, his scales dulled with age, but his eyes were sharp. He studied Rachel like she was a specimen in a lab. Remarkable, Verex said, his voice translated by a device on his chest. 3 months ago, you were a simple pilot. Now you coordinate fleet movements across a dozen systems. You process tactical information faster than our best computers. You are becoming something more than human. Rachel said nothing. She was searching through the bond for Thornscale, but it felt muffled, distant. Whatever these cells were made of, they dampened the connection. Do you know why we captured you instead of killing you? Verex continued. Because we need to understand the dragon-human bond. How it works. How it changes you. We've been studying you for 3 days now. 3 days. Rachel's heart sank. She'd been unconscious for 3 days. Varix activated a hologram. It showed Rachel's brain scans, her DNA, her cellular structure. Fascinating. Your neurons are forming new connections at a rate we've never seen in any species. Your cells are regenerating faster. Your muscle density has increased by 30%. And all of this has happened in just 3 months since bonding with the dragon. He zoomed in on a strand of her DNA. But the most interesting part is here. Dormant genetic sequences are activating. Code that's been sleeping in human DNA for millennia. The precursor genes, Rachel said quietly. Exactly. Varix turned off the hologram. You see, this is what the Council fears. Not that you will defeat us in battle. We have numbers. We have resources. Eventually, we would weigh you down. No, what terrifies the Council is what you are becoming. Your species is evolving in real time, Rachel Morgan. Every human who bonds with a dragon changes. Improves. And those changes can be passed to your children. He pulled up another hologram. This one showed projections. Mathematical models. Our scientists have run the numbers. If just 10% of humanity bonds with dragons, within 3 generations you will be a completely different species. Smarter. Faster. Stronger. Longer lived. You will make the rest of us obsolete. The Council cannot allow that. Rachel looked at the projections and felt cold. So you're going to kill us all? The Vril wants that, yes. But I am not Vril. Varix dismissed the hologram. I am old, Rachel Morgan. I have lived through 2 centuries of Council politics. I have seen species rise and fall. And I have learned that exterminating an entire race is not only morally wrong, it is strategically stupid. It creates martyrs. It unites enemies. It guarantees endless war. He leaned closer to the transparent wall. I brought you here to offer you a choice. A way to end this war without genocide. What choice? Rachel asked suspiciously. Surrender. Have your dragon riders stand down. In return, the Council will lift the blockade. Humanity can keep its colonies, its independence. The only condition is that no more humans bond with dragons. The ones who have already bonded can keep their partners, but it ends there. No new riders. No further evolution. Humanity remains as you are now. Rachel stared at him. You want us to give up our future? I want to save your species, Varix corrected. Right now, you're winning battles. But the Vril are building something in secret. A planet killer weapon. It will be operational in 2 weeks. They plan to use it on Earth. Kill 7 billion humans in one strike and break your will to resist. He let that sink in. I can stop them. I have allies in the Council who want peace. But I need you to give me leverage. Agree to the terms, and I will make sure Earth survives. Rachel felt sick. Every instinct screamed not to trust him. But through the muffled bond, she could sense Thornscale's agreement. The dragon had been listening. He believed Varix was telling the truth. I need to think, Rachel said. You have 6 hours, Varix replied. Then I return you and your dragon to your people. You can deliver my offer to your leaders. But know this. If you refuse, if you continue this war, the Vril will not stop with Earth. They will systematically destroy every human colony. Every station. Every ship. They would rather commit genocide than risk humanity's evolution. After Varix left, Rachel sat in silence. She reached out through the bond, finally able to feel Thornscale more clearly. The dragon's consciousness touched hers, and she felt his ancient grief. He'd seen this before. Thousands of years ago, when the precursors were at their height, the other species had made the same choice. Destroy us or be made obsolete. What do we do? Rachel asked. Through their bond, she felt Thornscale's response. Not words exactly, but a feeling. A memory. Danny. Her son, who was now walking and talking like a 3-year-old despite being less than a year old. Danny, who had become the heart of the Dragon Rider network. Who carried the strongest precursor genes of any human alive. And Rachel understood. The answer wasn't surrender or continued war. The answer was showing the galaxy what humanity could become. Not conquerors like the ancient precursors. Something better. But they needed time to prove it. 6 hours later, Varix returned. Rachel gave him her answer. I'll deliver your offer. But I can't promise humanity will accept. We don't react well to threats. I know, Varek said. Your species never has. It's why you've survived this long. He gave orders, and the guards began releasing Thornscale from his chains. The Vril will launch their weapon in 12 days now. I cannot stop them. I can only hope your people choose survival over pride. As Thornscale and Rachel prepared to leave, the Emperor added one more thing. Your son, Danny. Our scientists detected something unusual about him during our scans of you. He is not just bonded to one dragon. He is bonded to all of them. Every dragon that has awakened can feel him. He is becoming a living bridge between your species and theirs. Rachel held that information close as she and Thornscale finally escaped. They jumped to faster-than-light speed, racing back toward Earth. But Rachel wasn't thinking about Varex's offer anymore. She was thinking about what the Saurian scientists had discovered. About Danny. About what her son was becoming. And about the planet-killer weapon that would reach Earth in less than 2 weeks. Rachel reached Earth with 5 days to spare. The planet-killer was coming, and every human in the solar system knew it. The massive weapon looked like a small moon on long-range sensors, crawling through space at sublight speeds. Slow, but inevitable. The Vril had announced its launch on all frequencies, wanting humanity to watch their doom approach. Wanting them to feel the fear. Earth's government held emergency sessions. Some wanted to accept Varex's offer. Surrender, live as they were, never bond with dragons again. Others wanted to evacuate, scatter humanity across the galaxy, survive as refugees. The Dragon Riders wanted to fight, to throw everything they had at the weapon before it reached Earth. But Rachel knew none of those options would work. She sat in her sister's apartment in Denver, watching Danny play with blocks on the floor. Except he wasn't really playing. He was arranging them in patterns that looked random but weren't. Rachel could feel through their bond that he was thinking, processing, working through some problem his young mind couldn't quite express in words yet. Mama, Danny said suddenly, looking up at her with those eyes that sometimes flashed gold. It's not a weapon. Rachel knelt beside him. What do you mean, sweetheart? Danny pointed at the news feed showing the planet killer on the screen. They made it wrong. It's supposed to break things, but the energy matrix is inverted. If you flip it, it becomes something else. Rachel's blood went cold. Danny was 11 months old. He shouldn't be able to understand energy matrices or weapons systems. But through their bond with Thornscale, through the network connecting all dragons and riders, information was flowing into him. Knowledge from the dragon's ancient memories. Understanding that his rapidly developing brain was absorbing and processing. She reached out through the bond network, touching the minds of every dragon and rider across human space. I need everyone to listen. Danny sees something. Something important. Over the next hour, through the bond network, Danny showed them what he meant. Not in words, but in pure concepts, images, understanding. The planet killer wasn't just a weapon. It was built using principles the Vril had stolen from ancient precursor technology. Technology that was never meant to destroy, but to create. To terraform. To reshape matter and energy. The Vril had twisted it into a weapon, but the core design was still there, buried under their modifications. Kevin Torres, the fighter pilot bonded to Swiftwind, was the first to understand. We can reprogram it. Turn it into a broadcast array. Something that can transmit across the entire galaxy simultaneously. Lisa Chen, the teacher from New Terra, added her thoughts through the bond. But transmit what? What message could possibly stop this war? Rachel felt the answer come from Thornscale, from all the dragons actually. The truth. The real history that the Council had been hiding for 10,000 years. The dragons carried memories. Not just their own, but genetic memories passed down through generations. They remembered the precursors. They remembered the partnership. And they remembered what really happened during the Purge Wars. It wasn't the simple story the Council told of liberating the galaxy from tyrants. It was uglier than that. Messier. The precursors had made mistakes, yes. They'd been arrogant, had treated other species as lesser. But they'd also been changing, trying to share their knowledge, trying to create a true galactic community. The Council's founders had been afraid. Afraid of becoming obsolete. Afraid of a future where they weren't the ones in charge. So they'd struck first. They destroyed the precursors and their dragon partners, then rewrote history to make themselves heroes. They'd built their entire civilization on a lie. If we broadcast that truth, Rachel said slowly, working through the implications, every species in the galaxy learns that the Council was founded on genocide. That they've been lying for millennia. It would tear the Council apart, Robert Bailey added through the bond. The younger species, the ones who joined later, they'd revolt. But we only have 5 days, Kevin pointed out. The weapon will reach Earth before we can modify it. And even if we had time, how do we get close enough to reprogram it? The Vril have it surrounded by their entire fleet. Danny stood up, walked over to Rachel, and put his small hand on her cheek. Through their bond, through the connection to Thornscale, Rachel felt something shift. Danny's consciousness was growing, expanding. She realized with shock that her son was connected to every dragon that had awakened. Over 300 of them now. And through them, he was connected to every rider. He'd become a living network hub, processing information from hundreds of minds simultaneously. We don't need time, Danny said clearly. We already know how to do it. We've always known. And suddenly, Rachel understood. The knowledge wasn't just in the dragon's memories. It was in human DNA. The dormant precursor genes that were activating in every bonded rider. They weren't just getting stronger and faster. They were remembering. Remembering technology and science from a civilization that had ended 10,000 years ago. Rachel reached out through the bond. Everyone. Check your memories. Not your real memories. The other ones. The dreams that feel too real. The understanding of things you've never studied. Across human space, 200 dragon riders went silent as they looked inward. And one by one, they found it. Genetic memory. Inherited knowledge. The precursors had coded their civilization's accumulated wisdom into DNA, into sequences that would only activate under specific conditions. Bonding with dragons was that condition. Kevin suddenly knew how to manipulate exotic particles he'd never heard of. Lisa understood mathematical principles that wouldn't be discovered for centuries. Robert could visualize machines that Earth's engineers said were impossible. And all of them, working together through the bond network, could pool that knowledge. Share it. Build on it. They had 72 hours before the planet killer entered Earth's orbit. Rachel and the other riders began working with human engineers, explaining concepts they barely understood themselves but knew with absolute certainty were correct. They modified human ships using principles that made scientists shake their heads in disbelief. Ships that had taken years to build were retrofitted in days. On the third day, a fleet of 30 modified human vessels launched from Earth. Each one carried a dragon rider pair. They weren't going to destroy the planet killer. They were going to steal it. The Vril fleet surrounding the weapon numbered over 200 ships. Admiral Krell himself commanded from his flagship, personally ensuring nothing would stop their weapon from reaching Earth. He watched the human ships approach and actually laughed. 30 vessels against 200. The humans had gone insane with desperation. Then the human ships did something impossible. They opened wormholes. Actual stable wormholes, something that required exotic matter and energy levels that shouldn't exist outside of black holes. The dragons, working with their riders, had figured out how to generate that energy through their crystalline bodies. How to shape spacetime itself. The 30 human ships didn't fly into the Vril fleet. They appeared inside it. Dozens of small wormholes opened simultaneously, and suddenly the human vessels were scattered throughout the Vril formation. Too close to fire without hitting their own ships. Too spread out to target efficiently. Rachel and Thornscale materialized right next to the planet killer itself. She could see Krell's flagship on her sensors, could imagine his shock. Through the bond, she felt Danny's presence. Her son was back on Earth, but his consciousness was here too, distributed through the network, guiding them all. Now, Danny's voice echoed through every rider's mind. The dragons released a coordinated electromagnetic pulse. Every Vril ship went dark. And in that moment of chaos, Rachel plugged Thornscale's consciousness directly into the planet killer's systems. The dragon's mind, supported by Danny's, supported by every dragon and rider in the network, rewrote the weapon's core programming in 11 seconds. The planet killer's massive energy collectors, designed to channel destructive force, reconfigured. Its transmission systems, meant to deliver that force to a planet's core, repurposed. The weapon was still active, still charging, but now it would broadcast instead of destroy. Krell's fleet came back online to find the humans already retreating through wormholes. He gave the order to stop the weapon, but it was too late. The planet killer reached Earth's orbit and activated. Instead of death, it transmitted truth. Every ship, every station, every communication device in the galaxy received the same broadcast. Historical records pulled from dragon genetic memory. Videos, documents, testimony from the Purge Wars. The galaxy watched as the Council's founders systematically destroyed the precursors, then covered it up. Watched as they built their civilization on lies and genocide. watched as they did the same thing to humanity the moment humans showed signs of precursor heritage. The broadcast lasted for 6 hours. 6 hours of undeniable truth transmitted directly from precursor genetic memory. By the time it ended, the galaxy was in chaos. On 40 worlds, younger species began protesting, demanding answers from their council representatives. The Centauri formally withdrew from the council. The Felids followed. Then the Avians. Within days, the entire council structure began collapsing. On Earth, Rachel held Danny as they watched the news feeds. The Vril were in full retreat, their fleet scattered. Varex had made a public statement condemning the Purge Wars and calling for a new galactic government, one based on truth and cooperation. Krell had been arrested by his own people, facing trial for crimes against sapient species. "It's over," Rachel whispered. "No," Danny said, and his voice carried a weight beyond his age. "It's beginning." He was right. Over the next months, representatives from dozens of species came to Earth. Not to threaten, but to learn. To understand. Humans and dragons began teaching what they remembered, what they'd rediscovered. Technology that could benefit everyone. Medical advances. Agricultural techniques. Methods of space travel that didn't require massive fleets. The galaxy didn't return to what it was under precursor rule. It became something new. A true partnership. Humans and dragons worked together, not as masters of the galaxy but as teachers. As guides helping other species advance at their own pace. Rachel watched young people from a dozen different worlds studying alongside human children and dragon hatchlings. Watched them learn from each other instead of fearing each other. 1 year after the war ended, Rachel stood on a balcony in Geneva at the signing of the new Galactic Accord. 73 species agreed to mutual cooperation, shared knowledge, and protection of developing worlds. Danny, now walking and talking like a 5-year-old despite being barely 2, stood beside her. Thornscale's massive head rested on the balcony railing, his golden eyes watching the ceremony with satisfaction. "Mama," Danny asked, "are we precursors now?" Rachel thought about that. "No, sweetheart. We're something better. We're what the precursors should have been. We're partners. All of us together." The galaxy had learned its lesson. Power without wisdom led to tyranny. But wisdom shared freely led to peace. And humanity, bonded with dragons, had shown them all what was possible when fear gave way to hope.